Okay, well there we go. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. When comes the help of Allah and victory, and you does see the people enter Allah's religion in the crowds, celebrate the praises of your Lord and pray for His forgiveness, for He is often returning in grace and mercy. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
On behalf of his learned scholar, Sheikh Abdul Latif Bedi, Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, Chairman of the Board, Hajj Kamal Sharada, and the entire IIOK family, we welcome you to our nightly Ramadan English program. Before I introduce tonight's special guest and renowned scholar, Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, there are a few program announcements I need to make. We kindly request you silence your phones and refrain from speaking during the lecture so everyone may benefit from its educational purposes. Tonight's lecture, as well as previous lectures, can be viewed at our website, iiokonline.org. The Islamic Institute of Knowledge will be giving away 3 iPads during our English program. Participation requires individuals to pay close attention and be able to correctly answer questions related to the lecture. The correct answers will then be entered into a drawing at the end of the week for the prize giveaway. Only 1 drawing per family, please. Following tonight's lecture, we will have a question and answer session. We encourage everyone to participate. Our featured speaker, Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, is currently a professor at the University of Detroit Mercy, teaching world religions. Sheikh Kazarouni holds a PhD in philosophy with a concentration in religion and social change. Sheikh Kazarouni studied at the seminaries in Al-Najaf, Iraq, and Qom, Iran. Please help me welcome to the podium Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you, sister. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. I think it's becoming a norm. Every night I have to ask for a louder salawat. So, الثاني وعلى أصواتكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His guidance and His blessing, and we convey our messages to the Holy and salam and greeting to the Holy Prophet of Islam and his pure progenies and selected disciples. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أولى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وكان الله غفورا رحيما. O Prophet, tell your wives, your daughters, and the wives of the all believers that they should draw down their shawls over themselves. This will make it more likely to be recognized and not harassed, and Allah is most forgiving, most merciful. Yesterday, being the Friday of the last Friday of Ramadan, and by now it's recognized as Yawm al-Quds, I touched upon a number of major issues within how historically the day of Quds came to exist. I stated that it was Marhum Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi in 1979, where he, through a statement that he wrote, called upon the Muslims as well as the non-Muslims to stand up for the Palestinian right and to support Palestinians against the injustices that are committed against them by the Zionist regime. Naturally, that led to asking the question that the Palestinian crisis was not new for 1979. Those who have followed the history of Palestine, and particularly when you read the history of Zionism, how it evolved in Europe, particularly Germany, and then moved to the Middle East, you will see that the crisis, Palestinian crisis, goes back at least, if not the end of the 19th century, but the beginning of the 20th century. It was the Balfour Agreement of 1909, 1908, and later on the division of the Ottoman land into small enclaves, call it the national state or Arab state, primarily developed by the colonial powers to support the Zionist project in the Middle East. I also, after that, stated that unfortunately, when we try to assess and contextualize the Palestinian issue, we forget that it's part of a world crisis rather than just purely an Arab, Israeli, or Middle Eastern issue. And if you go to the statement that the Imam rahmatullah alayhi wrote and called upon people, although the beginning of the statement alludes to the Palestinian issue, but the end of it, it reflects or represents it within the whole global conflict of justice versus injustice or oppression. And I also indicated that if we want to understand the crisis within the Middle East, and if we want to contribute to the resolution of it, we have to have a clear vision of the political reality today, in which the one military power dictates and the rest of the world they have to follow, and the axis of resistance that exists in the Middle East that primarily contains within it Iran, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Bahrain. These are as part of the liberation movement that they resist American hegemony in the region. At the end, a question was presented by the brother regarding hijab. And I was thinking of addressing it probably as we got close to the end of the program by, say, Tuesday or Wednesday. I received a couple of emails that there were a few individuals that did not have a clear understanding of the Quranic basis for the whole thing in the light of some commentaries to the contrary. So to address this issue, I would like to start by asking a question. First of all the legal precedent in Islam is based on a unique worldview, the Islamic worldview. And we have to ask ourselves when it comes to any law or any opinion within Islam, regarding gender distinction. Do we maintain that Islam intends to isolate women inside the house, or Islam intends to regulate the relationship between men and women rather than isolate them? Those who claim that primarily in the contemporary period, Salafis fall within that category, that Islam is there, that women do not have to be seen in public completely. They have to be isolated. This is why if you go and negotiate or discuss this affair with the scholars over there, they are adamant that according to their reading of the text, women should not come out of the house. They should be isolated completely. If we start with this kind of mentality, that Islam is there to isolate nearly 55% of the population based on their gender, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, then our interpretation of the text, verses in the Holy Quran or Hadith, is going to be totally different if we were to say, no, Islam does not intend to isolate women, but to regulate the relationship between men and women on a basis in which both genders, men and women, will feel free to interact in the society, but without bringing in any element that might affect that kind of free relationship. So in essence, what we have to explain, can we regulate the relationship on a base in which sensuality is taken out, or do we have to address it with that coming as part of the conversation? If we look at all ahadith and verses in the Holy Quran, we see that there is nowhere in Islam to indicate that Islam wants to isolate women. The regulation, the rules, and the judgments are not to isolate, it's to regulate the relationship. So a balance is reached between how the two genders interact. Though some people, those of you who are familiar with Western feminism, for example, and even Muslim feminism that are informed by Western feminism, we see that the critique is based primarily on what we call freedom of choice. Freedom of choice in an individual basis. That is a totally different issue that inshallah we will deal with another night if we get a chance. But Islam, in all the laws that have been prescribed to regulate the relationship between men and women, is there to create a balance between the two, where neither men nor women feel obligated to isolate themselves from the rest of the society, because rationally it will be hard to support that over 50% of the population have to be separated from the social structure purely because they have been created women. This is contrary to the notion of justice that we consider to be so critical in Islam. So to begin with, to understand the notion of hijab and the way Quran addresses it, and how the ahadith interpret and clarifies it, and how it was perceived at the early history of Islam. Because one of the fundamental problems that we have with people simply open the book these days and they read one verse of the Holy Quran, well, there is nothing in this verse that says anything about hijab. What they miss was the context under which the verse was revealed and how early people of Islam understood it and practiced it. When we try to look at the Holy Quran regarding hijab, we see that hijab was part of the issues that gradually became obligatory rather than in one straight regulation. The first verse that was revealed is the verse that clearly distinguished between the wives of the Holy Prophet regarding the male, how the male within the community reacted or should react when they go to ask something from the wife of the Holy Prophet. This is verse 53, Surah Ahzab. That's the first step. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ مَتَاعًا فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ. When, O male believers, when you have something to ask the women of the Holy Prophet or his household, the female of his household, you have to ask these women or female from behind a curtain. That was the first step. The second step, the same chapter, verse 55, that came with a clear now exception, limiting the broad ayah that came prohibiting any male from asking the female of the Holy Prophet, being daughters or wives, about anything, but making an exception as far as, well, the wife's parents, the wife's brothers, the wife's nephews, the wife's sons, etc., etc. These are exception to the ruling, which means these people can go to these wives or female members of the family of the Holy Prophet and ask them any question that they want without the curtain. You have to follow the whole logic to be able to get to the verse that finally comes creating the parameters of what we call code of dress today. So first step is a clear distinction or clear instruction to the males within the community. If they want to go and ask the female, remember the construction of the Holy Prophet's household within Masjid al-Nabi. These wives had only small rooms that were literally attached to the mosque, and they had an opening to the mosque. The doors or windows, whatever it opened to the mosque, and people who came to the mosque had access to the houses of the wives. They were not isolated. Literally, you could go into the mosque and you can go to the door and ask al-Mu'mineen, say Aisha, or al-Mu'mineen, somebody else, some question. So the first instruction is that you can't barge into the household of the Holy Prophet because you want to ask their wives a question or you have something that you need. You have to wait until the curtain is drawn and you speak to them behind the curtain. So separating the wives from the rest of the population. The next instruction comes when the regulation, this absolute general regulation, is limited.
When brothers are like, no, refer to sisters with the hijab as almost like a different species, right? Versus, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they respect, and it's a phenomenon, not so much in other parts of the world, because like, for instance, my relatives, when they come here from Australia, they're like, it's the other way around. My cousins tell me in Australia, if you don't wear the hijab, it's like the other way around. You're the outcast. And I think here in Dearborn, I think they perpetuate this idea, and it's more of a newer phenomenon. What can we do to address the brothers' side of this? Not so much the sisters, but what we can do as brothers to encourage a better environment for our sisters.
I think it goes back to the family to begin with. The root of this dichotomy that exists within our community begins with the upbringing, how the role models that we have within the family portray and project the value of hijab, the understanding and the parameters of hijab, and that whether hijab is purely an external issue or whether the external issue is a reflection of the internal taqwa. Because there is a hadith that hijab is contained within the concept of taqwa as part of God-centric. So once the inner soul is controlled, and once the ego is controlled, it projects itself in the code of dress that we wear. We won't become ostentatious, we won't become extremely blazing in the way that we dress, etc., etc. So we start with the family first. Until that issue is clearly defined and we have a clear understanding within the family as to what is the meaning of hijab, the children that come out or brought up by such family that they are confused about the issue itself, whether it's purely the dress outside or inside, I don't think we can expect much. Then comes the issue of education. This is where the role of education comes in, that to educate our younger brothers and our younger sisters as to clear understanding that this is not intended to isolate them, isolate those who wear the hijab in a correct way. It's a way to regulate the relationship, where the male individuals that are not yet of quality of taqwa, that the ego is there and they could become harassers of the sisters that are not wearing hijab, or even the ones that are wearing hijab. This is not acceptable. So it's the role of education as well. Unfortunately, neither in the secular school or in our private school these are addressed. So it becomes an issue that ultimately causes tension at the age or at the time of adolescence. Now you have the whole sensual and sexual feeling confronted with this reality outside, those who do and those who do not. So it's a multiple approach. It's not just we can tell the male or the female this is how you should do, unless the period of education and proper role models are created for them.
Assalamu alaikum. I've spoken to a few sisters in the past, and this is what I came up with. That's why I wanted you to talk about the topic. Two schools of thoughts. One school says we can be modest, but no need for hijab. The second would say, even with hijab, if we want to be harassed, we would be harassed. So what's the point? So both, I need you to touch base on those two.
Both of them are wrong.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying this is how the perception is like, okay, I don't need the hijab because I can be modest without the hijab and not be harassed. And then if I am even wearing the hijab, whoever wants to harass me is going to harass me anyway. And now maybe he has more curiosity to harass me. So please.
You see, when we talk about modesty that is mentioned in the Holy Quran, we have to understand how the Holy Quran defines that modesty, and how Ahlul Bayt defined that modesty, how the early history of Islam defines modesty. If a person comes forward and defines modesty in a unique way that he or she wants it, that literally supports their own way of life, there is nothing we can do about it. That's their own understanding of modesty. But it's not the modesty that is part and parcel of this regulation. It's modesty in a way in which your soul as well as your outside reflect both understanding of it. So the person or persons or the school of thought that says I can be modest, but I don't want to wear the hijab. That's their own definition of modesty, not the modesty that the verse in the Holy Quran says, because the verse in the Holy Quran brings the modesty within the framework of the code of dress, not external from it. So the notion that somebody comes and says, I can have that modesty, نُؤْمِنُ بِبَعْضٍ وَنَكْفُرُ بِبَعْضٍ, I can have that modesty, but in separation from the code of dress. That's not what the Quran intends, because Quran locates that modesty within the code of dress. They go hand in hand. For others, the second school of thought that says if I wear hijab, then still some group of people might be harassing me. To a degree, it's correct. It's the corruption within the society. If you go back to the early history of Islam, it was exactly for that reason that you at least code of dress has a language, has a signal that tells those who intend to harass that I have a dignity and honor that I intend to preserve and respect. Whether they respect it or not, that's a different story. So, because somebody else does not want to adhere to the responsibility, it does not allow me to disregard my own responsibility towards the law. These are two different things. If a person, I can say something else. Well, there are people that drink, or there are people that break the fast during the month of Ramadan. Because they disobey, is that a justification for me to disobey as well? وَلَا تَزِرْ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. If somebody commits a sin, it doesn't mean that I have to commit a sin as well. So I am responsible for my action, other people responsible for theirs. If they don't fulfill their responsibility, it does not exonerate me from fulfilling my responsibility. So the person that defines dignity or honor or modesty in a way they want to, we have to respectfully disagree with their point of view, that this is a unique phraseology that Islam has within a frame of reference to the code of dress, supported by a number of ahadith and tradition from Ahlul Bayt and the Holy Prophet that clearly establishes that the honor and dignity and the modesty is within this context. And the person that says, well, others are going to misbehave, yes, but by itself it doesn't mean that I should disrespect my responsibility towards what I have. These are two independent things. We cannot convince the person that doesn't want to wear the hijab, says, I'm modest, my hair is uncovered, or my skirt is loose, or something else. That's their understanding of modesty, but this is not what Quranic understanding is.
Maulana, just to add, please, it's a very delicate topic for me. So, it looks like as if people don't get the point when scholars or explain the verse in the Quran, because you see flashing makeup, flashing out, you said foundation and all that, beauty out. It's taken lightly. It's not taken within the framework of religious obligation. It's something nice to do. That's how I feel. It's like if you don't pray, then you will be punished, or you will lose the communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's like a gravitational punishment that's going to happen in your life. This one is not taken that way. It's taken like it's nice to do, nice to have, but you know what, life goes on.
Yeah, it's a unique interpretation. You see, sometimes we choose religion and then we structure our lives to follow the command of religion. Sometimes we choose a way of life and then we search for an interpretation of religion that justifies and undermines the way of life that we have. I want to drink. I remember I attended a conference many years ago in San Francisco, one of the universities over there, and two Saudi girls came to me and they said, Imam, we are lesbians. Saudi girls. We want to remain lesbians, but we want to be Muslim as well. Can you change the law? Christians did it, Jews did it, Buddhists did it. Can you do it? What does that tell me? They want a faith that justifies a way of life, not I will construct my way of life according to a faith. It's the reverse process. So when you when you try to first establish a way of life, and then you try to search for an interpretation or to justify that way of life, that concept of dignity, modesty, and so on is an interpretation that supports my way of life, not the reverse. I'm not going to understand what the law says, then I would structure my life according to the law. No, this is my life. This is how I want to be. I want to be uncovered, or I want to be covered. I want to wear all tight clothing, and I want to use all the makeup. I want to wear shorts. I want to do everything. I want to wear bikini, or I want to do whatever this, and then I want to have an interpretation of the faith that would justify it. Which means what? What the Quran says in Surah Al-Baqarah, نُؤْمِنُ بِبَعْضٍ وَنَكْفُرُ بِبَعْضٍ. Selective. As long we become selective, as long as it is fulfilling the lifestyle that we have. And the other one is an excuse. I run away from my responsibility because somebody else is not adhering to their responsibility. None of them are rational. At the end of the day, لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ.
Ahsant. Inshallah, just for the sake of time, we're going to limit tonight's discussion. So is it, okay, one last one.
But the foundation of the Islam, alhamdulillah, Allah gave us La ikraha fi din. And there is a verse in the Quran, Allah says He's liberal. When He sent the sun and the moon and the rain, He's liberal. But the bottom line is these fundamental principles, La ikraha fi din. There should be
Brother, La ikraha fi din has a scope of application.
We need a whole lecture for that, inshallah.
Yeah, a scope of application is on the acceptance of faith. You cannot force somebody to accept faith. But once they have accepted, this is the framework of faith. You can either adhere with it or you can leave it. That's the La ikraha fi din. Not in any obligation, La ikraha fi din. Otherwise, it becomes chaotic. Yeah, it's within the foundation of the faith, because faith has to grow organically from the heart. You cannot beat somebody over the head and say, accept Islam. But at the same time, if somebody came and said that I adhere to this faith, well, this is what the faith says, then you're either a scholar and an authority within the faith to interpret the law, or you have to understand what are the interpretation of the authorities are. So these two have limitation that should not be mixed.
Ahsan, thank you. Inshallah, we will continue tomorrow with our lecture. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Sheikh Kazarouni. He can be contacted at Kazarouni, that's MIKAZEROONI @gmail.com. Once again, that's MIKAZEROONI
@gmail.com.
Ahsantum. Wassalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Please stay after, inshallah. Yeah, I've collected them. We're collecting the answers, and stay after for dua al-iftitah, and we also have the recitation of the Holy Quran. It is still Shahr Ramadan, and inshallah you will be rewarded for participating. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام عليكم. السلام شيخ. شلونك عمو؟ اهلا دكتور. هلا الصبح عشان كيف؟ الله يسلمك. منور دائما.